Good evening and welcome to the November 11th meeting of Florissant City Council. Before we do our Pledge of Allegiance in honor of Veterans Day, could we please have a moment of silence for all our veterans? Thank you. I would like to wish happy Veterans Day to all our veterans in attendance and the ones who are watching on TV and the people in attendance on this dais, including Mr. Stinnett, Mayor Schneider, Mr. Hernandez, and Mr. Caputa. We have Cub Scout Pack number 882 in attendance. Would you please come up to the front of the room and lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to remind everyone in attendance of our new policy about hearing from citizens. There are cards over on the table by the entrance to the chamber, and would you please fill them out if you plan on speaking on hearing from citizens? Thank you. Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Gribb? Here. Egan? Here. Caputa? Here. Shildroth?
Here.
Stinnett?
Here.
Pagano? Here. Schmidt? Here. Hernandez? Lee?
Seeing we have a quorum, I call this meeting to order. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. Do we have any corrections or additions to our meeting minutes of October 28th? Seeing none, Mr. Hernandez moves for approval, second by Ms. Pagano. All those in favor? Aye. Do we have any corrections or additions to our budget and work session minutes of October 26th and the 29th? Seeing none, Mr. Caputa moves for approval, seconded by Mr. Gribb. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a proclamation from Mayor Schneider. Dr. Rance Thomas.
Whereas Dr. Rance Thomas is the co-founder and president of the North County Churches United for Racial Harmony and Justice. The organization consists of 22 churches of various denominations that promote racial understanding and harmony within North County. Whereas Dr. Thomas is a longtime member of the North County Incorporated, he serves on the SSM DePaul and Healthcare Advisory Board, attends Christian Hospital's community leader meetings, is on the St. Louis Regional Health Commission's Task Force on Health Literacy. And whereas Dr. Thomas serves on the Trinity Catholic School Church Advisory Board, he was the founder of the National Minority Caucus in Higher Education to the National Council of Higher Education. He is a professor emeritus of social and criminal justice. Whereas while he is at Lewis and Clark Community College, he was instrumental in developing mentoring programs that helped minority students excel and served on the multiple educational boards and alumni associations. And whereas Dr. Thomas's outstanding leadership and work is reflected in the many hours he has received, including the Living Legend Award from 100 Black Men Association, Citizen of the Year Award from Old Jamestown Association, Leadership Award from Hazelwood School District, Outstanding Leadership Award from North County CARES, the Human and Civil Rights Award from Illinois Education Association, the Outstanding Education Award from NAACP, and the MLK Drum Major Award. Now therefore, I, Thomas P. Schneider, Mayor of the City of Florissant, do hereby wish to congratulate Dr. Rance Thomas for receiving the Paul F. Dietrich Legacy Leadership Award.
Doctor, we appreciate everything you do for the community. I know you personally from several organizations that we support and charities that we support. I know that you've not originally a native from St. Louis, that you came here via the military, and we really appreciate all the contributions that you make to all the different organizations. Particularly, one that comes to mind is has resulted in the organization called TEAM, which is the Emergency Assistance Ministry. All the different churches and denominations getting together to feed the hungry. There's hungry everywhere, and we try to service our own community by taking care of ourselves through our churches, and together we can do a lot more than each church can do by themselves. And I want you to give us a few, we have another event coming up Sunday with Archbishop Carlson's going to be at St. Ferdinand Church, and tell us a little bit about that event.
Thank you very much, Mayor Snyder. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of the Florissant area, working with the various organizations and groups. I've been working with Mayor Snyder for many years now on various projects. We're appreciative of the City of Florissant giving me this proclamation. It's been a wonderful experience. And I'd like to also invite you to attend our event on Sunday at St. Ferdinand Catholic Church at 3 o'clock, where our speaker will be Archbishop Robert Carlson. During that ceremony, we also will accept another church, our 23rd church, Holy Name Jesus Catholic Church in Bell Fountain. We had a ceremony about a month ago. We had a signing of the membership in that congregation to come forward and sign our covenant, which we're going to renew generally on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I expect to have at least 10 pastors. Most will be Catholic priests, including Monsignor Jack Schuler, who will be our host, Monsignor Mark Aldrich, Most Sacred Heart Catholic Church, as well as a number of others. So please come and join us and celebrate this wonderful day with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for everything you do.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a certificate of appreciation for Amanda Fox with our Youth Advisory Commission.
For your dedication, commitment, and loyal service as a volunteer member of the Youth Advisory Commission since February 14, 2005. Furthermore, it was your great vision and heartfelt compassion for those who have tragically lost a friend or family member to suicide that helped create and develop the annual Suicide Prevention Awareness event in 2009. Therefore, it is with great pride, sincerity, and appreciation that the City of Florissant and the Parks and Recreation Department recognize and commend you for you and your family for all of your contributions, efforts, and assistance in making the Suicide Prevention Awareness event a highly successful fundraising program for every year.
Well, Amanda, as a parent, it was probably the biggest nightmare that a parent could ever have. Something that none of us would ever want to face, and we appreciate so much you trying to bring awareness to this phenomena that unfortunately is increasing in our nation and in our community. And we're just glad that you were able to step forward and do something about it. Would you like to say anything?
It's just something that's very special to me. I lost a friend a few years ago. Lost several friends on it as well, and I know a lot of people that have been affected by it. But I want to thank the city for giving me the ability to be a part of the Youth Advisory Council, to have the ability to do this fundraiser, along with Beth and Brendan, who have both helped me out really with it.
Thank you so much.
Someone from the foundation. She has the check from the fundraiser to present to someone from the foundation as well.
And you have a document.
Yes. I have a check here for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in the amount of $3,170.17 from what we raised in September.
Who's receiving it?
As being a parent who has experienced this tragedy, I can't thank the City of Florissant and you, Amanda, for raising these funds. This organization has been a godsend to me, and I hope it has to you too. Again, thank you on behalf of the AFSP.
Spell out, say those words then, instead of just
American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's www.afp Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have hearing from citizens, but Mr. Hernandez tells me that no one has filled out a card and dropped it in the box. So we will move on. Next, we have communications, and there are none. Mr. Lee, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I opened my packet on Friday, I was a little bit disturbed to see Bill number 8965. This was an issue that we had discussed in our last work session, and we were asked, because of the urgency of getting information forward and starting the bid process, if we could authorize the Parks Department to go out and start getting bids for these lights at Ferdinand Park that are in bad shape. And it's my recollection that the council voted unanimously to authorize the city and the Parks Department to move forward with the process of getting bids. And at that same meeting, I also believe we voted unanimously to hold off on an appropriation until we got the actual bids in place, which is something that we had discussed on prior work sessions. That was something we were going to start to do. So, like I say, I was a bit surprised to see that bill in there, so I'm going to be moving to table that bill until such time that we have a bid in order to consider.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, Mr. Lee, with all due respect, you're going to have to table every bill that comes before you in the future, because we have a position that this is the way we have to do purchasing. This has been reviewed by our finance director, our public works director, and our city attorney. You and I spoke about this in person this past week. I thought you were understanding that our explanation to you was satisfactory. But if you need to, I can give you a position statement. I can read the position statement right now if you'd like to.
Well, Mayor, if you want to do this publicly and take the time of the meeting,
I tried to deal with you privately. Evidently, that didn't work.
We had this discussion during the work session. The council
and you and I had a discussion this past several days.
Correct. And what you told me in that discussion, and what I have the email that you told me is that you would like to present us with the feelings of the administration, the budget director, and Mr. Hessel. And I was waiting for that. I don't know if we're going to do that during the executive session or during the work session, but I haven't seen that yet.
Do it anytime you're ready.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to table the bill until such time.
Mr. Stinnett?
I concur with Mr. Lee's assessment that at the work session, that on a 9-0 vote, I think maybe 8-0, I'm not sure that Mr. Hernandez was there at that time, but it was after a number of occurrences where we've had problems with estimates, that it was decided that we would go forth. We could take a look and obtain the bids, but until we had those bids, we would not allocate the funds. So if there's a motion on the floor, I would certainly second it, that this bill be withdrawn.
Mayor?
Yeah, I would encourage the other members of the council to proceed with this, let this bill be read. All future bills will be introduced in this fashion. We have an urgent situation at St. Ferdinand Park, which has already been explained to you. We would like to get these lights, this project finished in time for the next playing season next spring. And the longer you delay this, the longer it's going to take for us to get this bid out and get the project underway.
Mr. Gribb?
I also agree that Mr. Lee is right, that this council in the work session came to the conclusion that we should have the bid prior to the first reading. However, since that time, I have done some research and talked to many people in the business of construction, and construction management. And it seems that it's common practice for this process to go to start with a budget estimate. A budget estimate that is generated by a qualified engineer, contractor, professional consultant, and in some cases, even our own staff has a professional expertise for some of these budget estimates. And I think that it would be proper to take this budget estimate, and that's what this is when we read the bill, and go forward from there. After the council reads the first reading with the budget estimate, and then I think the administration should then put out the RFPs and get official bids, accept these bids, close bids. Once the lowest and best bid is chosen, then for the second and third reading, all the documentation, including the bids, come back to this council prior to the second and third reading, so that we could have an understanding of exactly what's going to take place. We need a scope of work with that bid. That would be with the bid anyway. So if all that documentation would come back to us prior to the second and third reading, then we would know what we're spending the money on. At that time, then we could go on and make any amendments to that bid or provide any contingency expenses or whatever we need to do to add to the bid. And then we could vote on that appropriation bid, knowing exactly how much money we're spending. But on the first reading, I think that the way to do this is the way that the city has been doing it, using this budget estimate. However, that does not excuse the administration from giving us all of the documentation soon thereafter when the bids are, or when the RFPs are going out with the scope of work. So that's all I can say about that. Is I think that I changed my mind after doing a lot of research over the last week or so on construction management.
Thank you, Mr. Gribb. Mr. Stinnett.
As a point of clarification, Mr. Gribb, you are advocating that we basically give a range of spending availability. Once the bids come back in, then those bids will be brought back to the council for approval, for selection and approval. Is that a correct statement?
Then we have the bid, we have the scope of work, then we'll know what we're appropriating the money for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stinnett. Mr. Egan.
Thank you. I think Mr. Gribb makes good sense in this. I think that process probably appeases most of us, or at least me on the council, as far as before I make any final vote, I would have the actual bids in hand, and I could live with that as well.
Mr. Caputa.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Gribb also. I think we should go ahead with this and have a first reading on it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I would appreciate letting the first reading go, and then we can, if you want to discuss this in more detail. The position of the administration is that we have been doing it the way we've been doing it for 50 years. It's worked well for the city, that this is an administrative responsibility that the council is trying to perhaps meddle in, and we will continue to ask the council to appropriate funds, and then we will put things out for bid. when the money is appropriated. We do not want to get a reputation of being a consumer that would put something out for bid with an empty pocket, where the money was not secured, and the bidders wouldn't have the confidence that the project was going to go forth. So we're going to continue to do what we've been doing for 50 years. And if the council doesn't want to appropriate money for the projects, then you can answer to the citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lee?
Mr. Mayor, in all due respect, this may be the way they were doing it for 50 years, but it's not working. And I think most members on the council agree. When we get an estimate that says it's going to be $33,500 to replace one light post, and then when members of the council question it, and then they act and move forward, and then we suddenly find out, well, it's only going to be $17,000. When we go out when we're asked to appropriate funds or to set up an appropriation for a new salt storage facility, and the amount comes in and you say, administration presents us with something that says one number, and when the bid comes in, it's almost double that number, I think that creates the problem that we're in as a council, because our responsibility as a council, not picking on your responsibility as administration, but our responsibility as a council is to appropriate funds. And I think Mr. Gribb may be looking at the city charter right now, but the appropriation of funds is something that I take very seriously. And we've had this discussion, and we had it the other evening, and we unanimously voted that this wasn't a good policy. And I think we are still on board, even Mr. Gribb is on board, that we want to change the way things have been done for 50 years. And so, you know, I have no problem with discussing it, and I'll be happy to discuss it right now on the floor. I'll spend the rest of the evening discussing it, or we can do it later. We discussed it in a work session, and we had this very discussion, and you voiced your objection at that time, and we took a vote. And then I feel like I was blindsided, and I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but then we see a bill that shows up in our packet, which is directly contrary to what we voted to do as a council. And if Mr. Shildroth felt compelled to sponsor that bill and to put it on the floor, that's up to him. I mean, that's totally his business. If we want to discuss Mr. Gribb's procedure at a later date, I don't know that I would have any objection to that, but I object to the way this went because it's my responsibility to allocate funds, and I'm not going to allocate funds for a pig in the poke when I have no idea how much it's going to be. If the bids, if we have an estimate of 300 and the bids come in at 200 or the bids come in at 400, it's a whole nother thing for us to have to consider. So I don't disagree with Mr. Gribb. I also don't disagree that you have a responsibility as an administrator. I'm not trying to step on that responsibility. This is not in the budget. This is basically a supplemental appropriation. It's not part of the budget. It's part of a special deal that we went to. And I'm assuming from our conversation that even though we took the time to discuss this and meet with the park staff and have this long discussion, and the council voted unanimously to go out for bids then because it was going to save us that 10 days from having to wait for a bill, now you're telling me that you've changed that and you haven't even gone out for bid yet, which seems counterintuitive to the whole discussion that we had that night. Administration came to us and said there was an urgency and we needed to get these bids out sooner than later. And that's why the council voted unanimously to show that we were in support of doing that so that you could save 10 days or 2 weeks or 3 weeks in order to do. If you're going to wait for a first and a second and a third reading before you even go out to bid, you're delaying your own process that you said time was on the essence. We won't be doing this until maybe the first of the year. And I don't agree with doing that.
Mr. Egan?
And my understanding of what occurred, as I recall in our meeting, was that we gave the Parks Director the authority to go out and seek bids because this project has a safety factor to it. And I'm not necessarily against the first reading this evening. I want to get this accomplished as soon as possible. However, I also would like to see the bids.
Mr. Gribb? Mr. Gribb?
Mr. Mayor, have there been RFPs sent out for this project?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Hessel, do you have anything to say this evening on this issue of the responsibility of the administration, responsibility of the council in this purchasing process, or would you do some research first?
I don't know that I need to do any research. I guess my response is, and I don't mean to sound like a lawyer, but you're both right. As Mr. Lee said, the council is responsible for appropriating funds. When you do that in the budget, then the administration is obviously entitled to expend those funds in accordance with the budget. When you come back for an appropriation, as you said, the way we've done it for the last 50 years is that the council, the administration seeks an appropriation of funds, and then you go out for bids. That's the way Florissant has done it. Other cities that I've represented don't quite do it that way. So it's really not so much a legal issue. It is more of an issue as to how the city council and the administration want to handle the process.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I have a comment, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Hessel a question as well. I hate to drag him into this, but, you know, I think that if you ask any business person that has a business that they don't have a problem with bidding on a project and giving a good bid on a project, knowing that they're only going to get maybe 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10 of those. I can understand the reluctance to just willy-nilly go out and issue 100 different RFPs if we're not serious about moving forward and doing what we're doing the RFPs for, and that could create a problem. But if we put out an RFP for a project and we have an estimate of $300,000 and it comes in at $700,000, we're probably not going to act on that, and we're not going to issue a contract. But in any business, including, let's just say any business, it's their job to submit bids and to review the, review the RFP, review the scope of work, and put forth a quality project and say, here's what it will cost to complete this scope of work if we were to get that contract. And then those sealed bids are open, they're reviewed, and we determine the lowest and best bid, and then we move forward. And Mr. Hessel, again, I wouldn't have put you on a spot this evening, but someone else already did. So there's other cities that you represent that they do not do the final appropriation of money without the final vote and support of the council. Is that not correct?
That is true.
Okay.
There are other cities, though, Tim, that, as the mayor is suggesting, have the city council appropriate funds so that all bidders know that the city council's bought into it. And you get, one would argue that you can get better bids that way. That's, I think Mr. Gribb alluded to that as a practice. I think that's what the mayor's saying as well, is that some would view it that bidders will sharpen their pencils more knowing that the city's bought into it because the legislative branch, meaning the city council, has already appropriated the funds, we're into it. Again, it's one of those issues that it isn't so much legal, it's what's the right process. And I know we're all in it for the same good, which is how are we going to get the best bang for our buck? The mayor is presenting one argument, you all are presenting a different one. It's far for me to say who's legally right or wrong. We're both right.
Mr. Stinnett?
Just as an additional note to the subject, as Mr. Lee said, it is the council's responsibility to allocate the funds, to approve the funds that will be spent on this project. So ultimately, as a last measure, a last checkpoint, that responsibility lies with this 9-member body. As we've said here, we can advocate going out with a range of funds that we're willing, if that's it's what we need for good faith, that's a consideration, as long as the bids come back and we know what the final price is.
Mr. Cribb?
Since there have not been any RFPs issued yet, maybe that's something the administration can do in the next 2 weeks while we table this. That's all.
Mr. Lee?
And the only other thing I want to point out is that if we come out and we say we're willing to spend X amount, let's say we're willing to spend $300,000 for a project, I think that's letting the potential bidder know that, hey, they're willing to spend $300,000 on this project. If we would have done this 6 months ago to replace the one pole, we would have said $33,500 is what we were willing to spend to replace one pole. But when we went out, it came back to be $17,000. So I think by putting a range in there and allocating that, you're putting a sign out as how much we're willing to spend. I think it's better that we have a vote of the council, and it can be done at a meeting. The council supports going out for RFPs for this particular project, for this scope of work, but not putting a dollar value on it. Because if you put a dollar value on it, you're signaling how much you're willing to spend. And so now these companies are going to say, we can get up to this amount for it. I don't think they sharpen their pencils as much if they're competing openly and have no idea what we're willing to spend or not spend. So that's just my thoughts.
There's a motion on the floor to continue Bill 8965. There's a motion seconded by Mr. Stennett. All those in favor? Wait,
you're not continuing.
Hold on.
You can't continue it if it's not on the floor.
Okay.
So you either have to remove it from the agenda. It has to
Okay.
be removed from the agenda.
Motion is to remove from the agenda, I'm sorry.
Right. Right. Right.
Sorry, I apologize.
Okay. Now you need all in favor.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No.
Roll call.
Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Gribb?
Yes.
Egan?
Yes.
Caputa?
Yes.
Shildroth?
Yes.
To remove it from the agenda?
Yeah.
Stennett?
Yes.
Pagano? Schmidt? Hernandez?
Yes.
Lee? Yes. Motion carries.
Ready? Next on the agenda, we have public hearings. Public hearing 13-10-026.
In accordance with Section 405-310 of the Florissant Zoning Code, a public hearing will be held by the City Council of Florissant, Missouri, in the council chambers at 955 Rue St. Francois on Monday, November 11, 2013, at 7 p.m. on the following proposition: to authorize an amendment to a pre-existing B5 zoning district to allow for the operation of a sit-down carry-out restaurant for the property located at 12925 New Halls Ferry Road. Citizens will have an opportunity to be heard. Anyone with special needs should contact the city clerk at least 5 days before said public hearing by calling 839-7630 or TDD 839-5142.
Mr. James Woodworth, are you here tonight?
My name is James Woodworth. I am the architect representing Miami Grill. I'd like to answer any technical questions about design or construction. With me tonight is the owner of Miami Grill, Ghassan Alfani. That's G-U-S-S-O-N-A-L-F-A-N. A-F-A-N-E-H. And he will answer any questions regarding the operation of Miami Grill. I'll explain briefly the nature of the project. As you know, the building was formerly a Long John Silver's restaurant. and it has been vacant for many years. The new Miami Grill intends to operate the same restaurant operation as the Long John Silver's restaurant. It will be a dine-in and carry-out restaurant. There are no physical changes to the exterior of the building other than performing maintenance on it and cleaning it up. We have redone the parking area. We've inserted a lot of new landscaping as recommended by the Architectural Review Board. The restaurant is designed to be basically a 12-hour operation. I think it was in a note somewhere of the hours that we have set it up. And with that, I think that's a general overview.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, hi, Mr. Woodworth, how are you doing? We spoke on the phone. Really, the main question I have is, I know we got plans for interior, but we really didn't get an outside rendering of what the exterior of the building. Now, is it going to remain the same color it is? Are we changing the color? Are we repainting it? I just don't have a feel for what we're doing on the exterior.
On the exterior, I'm sorry, I don't know how to work that.
You can turn that line up.
How do you do it?
Up top. See that little switch right there?
Turn it on.
See it? Up top right corner. On the top of the screen. There you go. Give that a minute, it'll come on. There you go.
This is the existing building before we started some of the repair work. The building coloring is the same. We just repainted the building. The existing signage that's here, you can see, has been removed, but this will be new signage in the same location, same size. Out in the front, this is an aerial view of the property, and there is a freestanding sign out here, and it will remain and be just refurbished to say Miami Grill and Restaurant. The parking area has been completely resurfaced, and on a lot of new trees and bushes have been put in. And that's it. The inside is basically remaining the same.
So the building's going to stay the same color. Now, the front
Same
windows
color.
have been painted in a red frame.
The building has already been repainted, and there was a lot of exterior repairs done to the wood siding. It's on it all right now.
And so the red is going to stay on the windows that are painted in the front already? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. We just didn't, there's no, color, we didn't get any color renderings. We got black and white. So there's no idea of what color the building was going to be or what it is or isn't going to be. And so that was kind of a concern. I had a lot of people asking me, well, is it going to be pink? Is it going to be purple? What's going to happen with it?
It is the same gray.
And there was no notes in the P&Z on it either, so that was a concern. So, but it is remaining the exact color it is now.
It is that way.
And the only trim color is going to be on it is going to be the red color that's on the windows. Is anything else going to be red?
No.
Okay.
Well, the doors are red, and the light fixtures, I don't know if they show,
well,
they're blue on there, but they're red now.
Okay.
That's it.
That's what I'm saying. See, we didn't really have any of that to go by, so it was just kind of a concern. So that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Egan?
Thank you. I know that there was a Miami Grill down in Pagedale. Are you related to that business? Okay. Will you be having a walk-up window?
A walk-up window, no. Drive-through, yes.
You'll be having a drive-through, that's my next question. And what hours of operation are you proposing?
10 to midnight weekdays, except Friday and Saturday, it's till 2 a.m.
Friday and Saturday till 2 a.m. and on the other days, what time will you be?
10 till midnight.
I'm not hearing you.
10 a.m. till 12.
10 a.m. till midnight, okay. What about alcohol? Will you be serving alcohol? Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Gribb?
The improvements that you've made, the plantings, the sealing of the asphalt, the striping of the asphalt, the handicap spaces, all this, have you received approval from our Public Works Department that all that was completed satisfactorily?
As far as I know, it is, well, it is complete, and there has been no objection to it. In fact, the building commissioner, Philip Blom, kind of thanked us for repairing the road that's on the side, which is all full of potholes and destroyed, and that has been repaired.
Okay.
That's the roadway between the abandoned Steak and Shake.
You're right, I'm familiar with that. And the drive-through was addressed at planning and zoning? Your
Yes.
Stacking and your
Yes.
maneuvering around in the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gribb. Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I had a couple of quick questions. On the information that we received, it says drive-through closed. So I'm curious, was this discussed at planning and zoning, and were the stacking of cars discussed?
It was addressed, yes.
Okay, because what we've got here said the drive-through would be closed, so.
A decision was made after all those were printed and submitted that they would have a drive-through.
Okay. I'll review my notes from planning and zoning because I didn't see that. But the other question I've got is, as the owner, are you going to be the owner-operator? Are you going to be the one there operating the business, or is it going to be operated by other people? Or
Managers will be operating, but I'll be in and out through locations, because I have other locations as well.
Okay.
I'm gonna float around to each one.
Okay, and on your site plan for the landscaping, you feel that you've completed all the landscaping to be in compliance?
It has been completed.
Okay, even though Mr. Lum says we appreciate you doing all this, have they approved all this landscaping?
Yes.
Because I noticed there were still some dead trees and bushes that were there that the last time I went by.
One dead bush right now that I don't know if it has been removed yet.
Okay, so all of the other, the number of trees that are in your thing, you feel that you're already in compliance with that?
They're all there.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Hernandez?
Hi there. You mentioned that road that comes in from the west, from Deer Hickey, you repaired the potholes and all that. You know, that's been bad for many, many years, and the developer, that's been very bad, those holes. They've been there for ages, so I'm glad you repaired them, because they never seemed to be repaired before when it was Long John Silver's, because I had to go around those holes every time I went there. Okay. So I'm glad you repaired those, and who's going to maintain that in the future? Is that going to be you again, or would it be someone else?
I'm not sure, because what I found out is that it does not belong to my landlord, so he wouldn't do anything. I did it just out of courtesy to my customers.
Sure, and that's great, and that's my concern. It's because for many years, it just never was repaired, and it was awful, you know, for people to always go around these huge potholes, though, and between the Steak and Shake and your business. So I just hope that you keep that, or keep on it, I guess, or, you know, the expense will be there if, you know, with the weather as years go by. So just be aware of that, and maybe someone needs to address that from the administration or somebody to find out to help maintain that better as well, because it could happen again. You know, I mean, it just gets 3 or 4 feet in diameter. It's just awful. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Caputa?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, my concern is, I was looking at the plans earlier, and it said about some concrete repair that you were going to do around on the building. Now, I know this is an old photo, but right here, that looks like that's pretty tore up a concrete. And I don't know if that's your wheelchair ramp or your handicap accessible to the building.
The handicap parking is back here in the back, and then there is the ramps. And the ramps come along the side of the building up to the front. This is not a handicap access.
Okay, so
like a sidewalk.
So this is just regular sidewalk right here, correct?
That's right.
Now, have you repaired that? Because that looks like that's pretty tore up, cracked up. There's grass growing in between there, grass right there. I mean, it looks like it's all just
Yeah, there's been
cracked and broken up.
There's been a lot of planting work in this area right here already, and there's mulch and plants and things.
Well, I'm not talking about the mulch, I'm talking about the concrete.
I'm trying to see where, it's this little piece of concrete right here that you're talking about. It is not a handicap ramp. The handicap parking is in the back.
Okay, it's probably right around there and these two
So it's
pieces
way-
of sidewalk
way
going
back
that
in the
way.
building.
So this is actually coming up from the other parking spaces, correct?
That's correct. It's over here.
So now, is this part of the sidewalk you said that you would have repaired? Because it did say that some repair work will be for the concrete
The
work.
asphalt paving, but as I inspected it, I didn't see the necessity to rip out any concrete and repair any sidewalks. Because there is a public sidewalk across the front.
Is this the public sidewalk then, right here?
No, it is not a public sidewalk.
Okay. And that's what I'm saying, that's pretty cracked up in there. I was just wondering if you were gonna fix that, because it looks like, just on the picture itself, it looks like a trip hazard. I mean, it looks like it's pretty much sunk right in there. I mean, the two pieces of concrete cracked, and that's where you have your trip hazard. I guarantee it.
I can't really answer your question because I think maybe I don't know how to answer that question. The sidewalk is in good condition is all I can tell you. We're not planning on doing any repair work. If anything, we'd take out the sidewalk because there's other walkways coming through. This is the walkway from the front of the parking area, and there's a walkway from the middle of the parking area, and that's a walkway that's there.
Where's that at? Yes, it says on your site work, demolition, remove lawn debris, cut wall opening, install salvage door per plan, refurbishing, patch and replace damaged concrete walls, patch asphalt and parking areas. Now, in your one plan, it has that, how your concrete is gonna be. So if that's not a trip hazard, maybe it just,
Oh, we will certainly inspect it to see
okay.
if it is.
I appreciate that. I was just wondering, just a question, just for the safety of your
From a
customers.
liability standpoint, I'm sure the owner wouldn't want a trip hazard either.
Actually, I never noticed it, so the first thing I will do is go and inspect it, but I think if it was bad, I would have caught it. But also, I don't know if I ventured out that way towards it. I was more worried about everything on my list.
Because anything over an inch is a trip hazard, considered a trip hazard.
But like I said, we never noticed it to be, so if we haven't noticed it, it might not be that bad, or it might just be weeds growing out from that old picture of when everything was kind of looking rough. But without going back and looking at it again, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caputa. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, I guess just follow up. So you have gone out and taken the grass out of these cracks then?
Yes.
Okay.
It's totally
Okay.
This is the original picture when we first kind of.
Okay. Well, again, see, that's what I'm saying. We didn't get those new renderings of what, so we have no idea. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Seeing no one else before this public hearing is closed, is there anyone who wishes to speak?
Kevin O'Donnell, 512 Rancho Lane, Florissant, Ward 4. I was at the P&Z meeting, the initial meeting, and as I recall, there was no drive-through, but I wasn't aware of the second meeting, if there was one, and I may have missed it, but the drive-through was initially supposed to be closed. So I don't know if you got your update on your P&Z or not in that respect. But it looks to me like they've done a lot of work on that building. And I was wondering, is this, where's the owner? Oh. I was wondering, just for information, do you have, it was Miami Grill and Deli, right? Yeah. Okay. And I looked at your menu online, and I was just wondering, it doesn't look like much of a deli. I mean,
Our other locations are Miami Grills.
Okay.
And this one's going to be Miami
Okay.
Grill and Deli.
Okay, I was just curious because I looked on the internet and there was one on California, and it was like, I knew it wasn't that. But anyway, I think they're doing good. I just, it's just that I didn't. I guess you weren't there at the initial meeting, so okay. I was just curious if how the drive-through was going to be open, you know, if it was approved and everything. So I would like to make sure that was correct, because a lot of these places do back up really bad. And I remember Long John Silver's over there. So that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
I can add something about the drive-through. Originally, when Mr. Woodworth asked me about it, he might have said something about a walk-up window or something. So I was like, no, we're not doing that. And I think that's where he originally said they're not using the drive-through. When he discussed it with me after last meeting, I was like, we are using the drive-through. It was a miscommunication between me and him. But I thought it was resolved, so I'm not sure. But I think another thing with the drive-through is we were asked if we were going to take orders at the drive-through, and we're not. We take call-in orders, you pick up at the drive-through, and that may have been part of the miscommunication as well. Just to let everyone know.
Mr. Schmidt, sorry.
Okay, so then let's clarify this. And it's really not a drive-through, it's a carry-out window.
If you call it
Okay,
that, I guess.
so we may have to change the bill, because the bill does say drive-through, and that's, a typical drive-through would be just like what McDonald's had. You drive up to an electronic device, you order, you drive up to the window. A carry-out window is completely different, or a carry-out area. That would signify that, yes, you do have to place an order before you get there. So I would prefer that it be a carry-out window, so that would be great. So just be aware that if that's what you want and that's what it is, I will amend the bill then to say that. So there will not be a drive-through then. You will not be able to take orders.
Well,
So be careful what you're asking for and what you want. So
if someone drove up to the window and hadn't called in and made an order, then we're
well, that would be a drive-through, and if I change the bill to a carry-out, you won't be able to do it legally. I mean, the ordinance will not say that. And that's what I want to do is review the P&Z minutes, because again, as far as I knew and was concerned was there was no drive-through. It was just being closed. So, I mean, I have no problem with meeting you and discussing this and figuring it out. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So,
I mean, I'd like to do whatever gets me open quicker.
Well, I mean, if you're going to do a drive-through, you can't expect people to drive up to the window and order and then sit at the window and wait for their order. You've got to do it beforehand at some device, and I don't know if your business allows you to make it that quick that you can do it that way. I don't know. So, again, you may have to sit and think about this and figure out, will that really work?
Well, our Riverview location has a drive-through, and most orders take about 15 minutes because it's cook to order.
Right.
So a lot of people usually call in, come pick up their order at the window. If they show up without calling in, they usually make their order at the window, and we tell them, come back in 15 minutes, and they roll back around in 15 minutes, or park in the parking lot, and someone brings it out to them curbside. That's how we do it at the other location.
And that's probably the way, yeah, the way it almost have to work, because you're going to have somebody sit at the window for 15 minutes, yeah.
Since we're used to that system, I wanted to just stay with that system.
All right. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Egan?
No, don't go away. Don't go away. Hello? We're not quite done. I wanted to make sure that with this window, you're not going to allow people to walk through the drive-up window, correct?
Not at all, no, of course not.
Okay, because
Strictly with the vehicle.
maybe a vehicle and you can't have people or on bicycles or go-karts or
No, never.
anything else. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Seeing no one else, Mr. Schmidt moves to close this public hearing, second by Mr. Hernandez. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, sir. Next on the agenda, we have old business, second readings. Bill 8943, the petitioner has informed me he's not ready to proceed, so I will make a motion to postpone this to our November 25th meeting. Seconded by Mr. Gribb. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have Bill 8952. Ms. Pagano moves for a second, seconded by Mr. Gribb. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance authorizing amendment to special use permit number 4892 to Dr. Paul Heron to allow for the replacement of a sign in an R4 zoning district for the property located at 395 Durhakey Road.
Mr. Hernandez moves for a third, second by Mr. Schmidt. All in favor? Aye.
Ordinance authorizing an amendment to special use permit number 4892 to Dr. Paul Heron to allow for replacement of a sign in R4 zoning district for the property located at 395 Durhakey Road.
Before the final vote is taken, is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak on this? Seeing none, clerk, please poll the council for the final vote.
Gribb?
Yes.
Egan?
Yes.
Laputa?
Yes.
Shildroth?
Yes.
Stinnett?
Yes.
Pagano? Schmidt? Hernandez? Lee?
Bill 8952 becomes ordinance number 8004. Next on the agenda is Bill 8953. Mr. Gribb moves for a second reading, seconded by Mr. Caputa. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance authorizing an amendment to special use permit number 3086 as amended by ordinance numbers 4640, 4875, 5210, and 6492 to Morello's Convenient Mart Incorporated, DBA MC Food Mart BP to allow for a digital sign in a B3 zoning district for the property located at 425 North Highway 67.
Ms. Pagano moves for a third reading, seconded by Mr. Lee. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance authorizing an amendment to special use permit number 3086 as amended by ordinance numbers 4640, 4875, 5210, and 6492 to Morello's Convenient Mart Incorporated, DBA MC Food Mart BP to allow for the digital sign in a B3 zoning district for the property located at 425 North Highway 67.
Before the final vote is taken, is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak on this? Seeing none, clerk, please poll the council for the final vote.
Gribb?
Yes.
Egan?
Yes.
Caputa?
Yes.
Shildroth?
Yes.
Stinnett?
Yes.
Pagano? Schmidt? Hernandez? Lee?
Bill 8953 becomes ordinance number 8005. Next on the agenda, we have Bill 8955. Mr. Lee moves for a second. I'll second that. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance appropriating $500,000 from general revenue fund to establish a property revitalization fund.
Mr. Schmidt moves for a third reading, second by Mr. Lee. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance appropriating $500,000 from the general revenue fund to establish a property revitalization fund.
Before the final vote is taken, is there anyone in attendance that wishes to speak on this? Seeing none, clerk, please poll the council for the final vote.
Gribb? Yes. Egan?
Yes.
Caputa?
Yes.
Shildroth?
Yes.
Stinnett?
Yes.
Pagano? Schmidt? Hernandez? Lee?
Bill 8955 becomes ordinance number 8006. Next on the agenda, we have Bill 8956. Mr. Lee moves for approval, second by Mr. Stinnett. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance creating and establishing a Florissant homeownership assistance program.
Mr. Hernandez moves for a third reading, second by Mr. Egan. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance creating and establishing a Florissant homeownership assistance program.
Before the final vote is taken, is there anyone in attendance that wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing none, clerk, please poll the council for the final vote.
Gribb? Egan?
Yes.
Caputa?
Yes.
Shildroth?
Yes.
Stinnett?
Yes.
Pagano? Schmidt? Hernandez? Lee?
Bill 8956 becomes ordinance number 8007. Next on the agenda, we have Bill 8957. Mr. Lee moves for a second by Mr. Hernandez. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance creating and establishing the Florissant Property Acquisition Program.
I'll move for a third reading, second by Ms. Pagano. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance creating and establishing the Florissant Property Acquisition Program.
Before the final vote is taken, is there anyone in attendance that wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing none, clerk, please poll the council for the final vote.
Gribb? Yes. Egan? Yes. Caputa? Yes. Shildroth?
Yes.
Stinnett?
Yes.
Pagano? Yes. Schmidt? Yes. Hernandez? Lee?
Yes. Bill 8957 becomes ordinance number 8008. I would like to thank the council and the administration for working on this bill together. These three were brought together originated by Mr. Lee, and I think it's going to help with some of the vacant houses we have in our city. And I look forward to a lot of people purchasing the homes that they're now in as rental property, and they make an investment in our community. I commend everyone up here. Next on the agenda is Bill 8958. Mr. Egan moves for a second by Mr. Caputa. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance approving reallocation of funds for the CDBG Community Development Block Grant budget for 2012-2013 funding.
Mr. Gribb moves for a third reading, second by Mr. Schmidt. All those in favor? Aye.
Ordinance approving reallocation of funds for the Community Development Block Grant CDBG budget for the 2012-2013 funding.
Before the final vote is taken, is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak on this? Seeing none, clerk, please poll the council for the final vote.
Gribb? Yes. Egan? Yes. Caputa?
Yes.
Shildroth?
Yes.
Stinnett?
Yes.
Pagano? Schmidt? Hernandez? Lee?
Bill 8958 becomes ordinance number 8009. Next on the agenda, we have new business. Mr. Lee.
Yeah, before we get into new business, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the vote on bill number 8947 from our last meeting.
I will second that motion. All those in favor to reconsider vote 8947, signal by saying aye.
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 Mr. President, I'd like to move to continue this bill to our November 25th meeting.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Pagano. You were quick. Next on the agenda, we have board appointments. Ms. Pagano?
Yes, I would like to appoint Alan Minks to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I will second that. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Ms. Pagano. Is there anyone else? Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a request from Ward 7, a request for a permit to keep one chicken for Willie and Mazzetta Barns located at 2255 LaGrange. The Health Department has recommended approval of this application.
Your call.
Ms. Pagano? Ms. Pagano moves for approval. All those in favor? Aye.
Need a second.
I will second that. All those in favor? Aye. Next on the agenda, we have Ward 2, an application request to transfer special use permit number 7760 from Candy's Restaurant and Grill to Zima LLC, doing business as Dogs and Fries, for the location and operation of a sit-down, carry-out, and catering restaurant located at 503 Paul. Mr. Gribb?
Last week I talked to Mr. Mo Mangle, the owner of the shopping center, and he essentially wants to take over the restaurant himself and open up under a new name, new menu. Same type of operation, though, so it's nothing new.
Thank you, Mr. Gribb. Mr. Egan.
You know, Mr. Mango also has a shopping center in Ward 3. I've had several conversations with him, and he recently in Ward 3 has been very attentive in dealing with the business that was causing my residents headaches, and so I think that he is in fact a good businessman and worthy of this request. I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Gribb moves for approval. All those in favor? Aye.
You need a second.
I'll second it. Sorry.
Yep.
Next, we have bills for first reading. Bill 8959.
Ordinance authorizing amendment to pre-existing B5 zoning district to allow for the operation of a sit-down carry-out restaurant for the property located at 12925 New Halls Ferry Road.
Bill 8960.
Ordinance transferring special use permit number 7760 from Candy's Restaurant and Grill to Zima LLC, DBA Dogs and Fries for the location and operation of a sit-down carry-out and catering restaurant at 503 Paul, located at 503 Paul.
Bill 8961.
Ordinance adopting a budget for the city of Florissant for the fiscal year commencing on December 1st, 2013 and ending on November 30th, 2014 and providing it for its effective date clause.
Bill 8962.
Ordinance amending section 125.065A, job classification and grade level by amending the grade level for selected job classifications and by adding job classifications.
Bill 8963.
Ordinance amending ordinance number 7928, establishing a new compensation plan for the seasonal employees for the city of Florissant and containing an effective date clause.
Bill 8964.
Ordinance amending ordinance number 7753, which established pay grades for all full-time positions by incorporating additional provisions for classified employees.
Next on the agenda, we have council announcements. Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, I wish to thank everyone that came out to the Veterans Day Parade yesterday. We had great weather, celebrate the Marine Corps' 238th birthday. I wish to thank the administration for their help and effort, and also my personal thanks to Mr. Todd Smith. He always seems to be there to help out and give us and provide to whatever we need, and I appreciate his help. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Lee.
Yeah, I also want to just take a moment to remember our veterans and thank them for their service. It was a great parade yesterday, and I think every council person tried taking credit for the weather, but then the mayor said that he actually took care of the weather, so we were covered on all fronts. I also want to remind everybody that if you're watching this live, that I'm going to be having a ward meeting this Wednesday, the 13th at the JFK Community Center. I'll be having one at 11 o'clock, and then repeating it again at 7 o'clock. So I hope to have good attendance, and we're going to have some good information for you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Caputa.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to congratulate all the veterans and wish them all a happy Veterans Day. And I know yesterday was November 10th and it was the Marine Corps birthday, but I know a lot of us emphasized on the Marines yesterday, but I'll tell you what, though, if it wasn't for all the services, Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marines, we wouldn't be where we're at today. And the Coast Guard, too. So, but so the Coast Guard gets left down a lot. A lot of people forget about the Coast Guard. But if it wasn't for all the services working together, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So I would just like to emphasize that we're all the services working together, and that's why we're at where we're at. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caputa. Mr. Stinnett.
In the spirit of the Veterans Day Parade, I would like to acknowledge the St. Louis County Veterans Coalition, who was responsible for organizing the biggest and best Veterans Day Parade in the St. Louis area. Job well done to that group of individuals. And I'd also like to remind the members of the residents of Ward 6 that I will have a ward meeting right in these chambers tomorrow night. That's Tuesday night, beginning at 7 p.m. Look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thank you, Mr. Stinnett. Mr. Egan.
Thank you again. I concur with the rest of the council that Our thoughts are with our Veterans Day and in my family. My future son-in-law is serving on the USS George Bush. We know he's getting ready to be deployed for 9 months. I have one of my officers in Maryland Heights who's being deployed next month in Afghanistan for 7 months. So we're going to keep them in our hearts and prayers until they're back on safe soil. Also, this is the last call for Guns and Hoses boxing tickets. It supports Backstoppers, a great organization. I have a fistful of tickets. If you want to go to the Metro Boxing Showdown, give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. I would like to thank Ward 5 resident Kathy Froelich and her husband, who invited me to DeLeo's a week ago Saturday night. I heard some great music, and I had a nice dinner with Kathy and a group of her friends. And I'm trying to get people to go to our local restaurants. I was at Chimmy's last week in Florissant Meadows, and it's a nice mom-and-pop Mexican restaurant that's really good. And I was fortunate enough to be at the soft opening for Here Today, a retail establishment in Florissant Meadows, the first of its kind by Tom Holly and the Rupp family. So I'm glad they picked Florissant, and would encourage folks to please patronize all of our restaurants whenever they can, all of our retail establishments. I'd like to thank Steve Frank and the Veterans Coalition and Mr. Pat Stinnett for a really good parade yesterday. And I promise not to run out of Tootsie Rolls next year, and I promise not to have the parade marshal on St. Charles Street come after me for throwing candy, so hopefully I'll get dispensation from Colonel Kaiser. Mayor Schneider.
You know, if the city council can't follow the rules, who can?
The judge said it was.
Now we're bringing the judge into it. Before I get started with my remarks, I'd like to just say that our prayers and hearts are with the Mayor James J. Egan family. Late Mayor James J. Egan, his grandson was one of those young St. Louisans that was killed in an auto accident at Old Miss over the weekend. So our hearts and prayers go to the Egan family. In regards to the Veterans Day parade, the parade has gotten a lot of notoriety and recognition, and we have, you can usually tell when you have someone that's running for office a year from now, you have a couple of candidates showing up and walking in the parade. They're more than welcome. We welcome everyone that wants to be in our parade and honor our veterans. It's got some TV coverage last night in the news. They had several seconds showing some of the highlights of the parade, and it was just really positive reflection on our very patriotic and faith-based community. I'd like to thank the Bridge at Florissant, the Senior Living Center, for inviting me to say a few words today at a special Veterans Day luncheon. And I'd also like to thank Drs. Joe, John, and Jen Bowen for asking me to preside over a Veterans Day dedication of a new flagpole and displaying a large United States flag they just installed. There was a McGraw-Millhaven from Big 550 KTRS was on hand, along with a lot of chamber members, and the honor guard was from a Maryland Heights VFW. And anyway, it was a very nice ceremony, except that I had to go straight from the ceremony into the dentist chair and have some more fun this afternoon. Last week, we opened up the first ever Here Today store, or I believe it opened probably last Tuesday or Wednesday, and it's by the people that used to have the Grandpa's stores, and it's a new concept in retail. They buy in excess items, excess inventory, and they display it in a very, very attractive manner. I think this is going to be where I know there's going to be a few men shopping there, but there's going to be a whole lot of women shopping there, and there's going to be a place where women are want to be seen and see and be seen. It's going to be probably the first of many stores in the St. Louis area and throughout the Midwest. I've been going to several schools, most of all the parochial schools, private schools, and public schools to talk about the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which happened 50 years ago this month. The students have been very attentive. The legacy of John F. Kennedy is very strong. I guess kind of like James Dean or someone that when someone leaves us early in life, when somebody dies young, it seems to make a more lasting impression. But JFK certainly left big footprints. On November 22nd at precisely 12:30 p.m., I've asked all the churches in Florissant to toll their bells in funeral fashion for 46 seconds, 1 second for each year of John F. Kennedy's life. And we've also planned to have a rededication of the John F. Kennedy Community Center to reflect on the legacy of John F. Kennedy and the fact that our center is named after him. So the public is invited to that for certainly. We have a contest going on between Ward 2 and Ward 4. Jeff Caputa was challenged by John Gribb. Their two wards are trying to see who can have the most blue totes out at the curb. We are going to be discontinuing our recycling center down at St. Ferdinand Park on January 6th, right after the holidays, because most of the recycling is taking place is free as part of your trash service. We will deliver a blue tote to your house upon request. And what we're going to do in wards 2 and 4, and I hope we don't get too many people too angry, but we're going to deliver totes to certain neighborhoods and hopefully that they will keep them and use them. And we're going to see which ward gets the most new usage of blue totes. And if this is successful in Ward 2 and Ward 4, and they don't call their councilman with too many complaints, then we'll probably try to get a few other council members to volunteer. But those were the only two that volunteered for this program. So let's go Ward 2 and go Ward 4. Right, Jeff and John? And I sent, there's been, forever, we have a very large Florissant zip code area, and different things appear in the news attributed to the city of Florissant, and it's because they're in the Florissant zip code. They say it happened in the city of Florissant. So I asked City Engineer Tim Barrett to prepare some maps to send to the news media to show them that we have zero land in the 63034 Florissant zip code. And in those three zip codes, only 45% of that is city of Florissant. 55% is not in the city of Florissant. And we'll continue to send them different communications of clarification so that they know where Florissant is and where Florissant is not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next meeting is on November 25th. City Hall Chambers at 7 o'clock. Before I move for adjournment, I would like to make an announcement. We will be going into closed session after we adjourn, and then we'll come out and we'll have a work session. Mr. Gribb moves for adjournment, second by Mr. Caputa. All those in favor? Aye.